Hi everyone and welcome back. In today's video, I'll be talking about how you can manage your network devices using pyATS. For those who are unfamiliar with the term, pyATS stands for Python Automation and Testing System, and it is an open source network automation and testing framework that is developed by Cisco. Although it is developed by Cisco, but it is also used across multiple vendors widely. It provides a set of Python libraries and tools for network engineers and developers to simplify the automation and validation of network infrastructure processes. So, under the hood of pyATS is something called Geni. Geni simplified the automation of complex network tasks and allow users to focus on high-level operations. Also, Geni includes parsers for various show commands, not only for Cisco, but for other vendors as well, such as Juniper, Nokia, Viptela, so on and so forth. You can check the list from the Geni parsers portal, which I included in the description below. So, what we will cover today, we are going to cover how we can interact with the network devices from the CLI of a server that has pyATS installed and up and running and has access to our network devices. We will see how we can execute certain commands to explore some of the pyATS features that it offers, such as show commands and comparing config files, so that we can see what changes has occurred between different snapshots of live configs. This will help us. If we need to roll back the changes, it would be easy to spot the difference between config versions, for example. We are also going to do the same from an IDE environment, whereby we use Python to interact with the data received and do all sort of clever things. We are going to explain how we can build the inventory file so that we can initiate connectivity to our network devices and explain how we can build the inventory YAML file. And then we will show you how you can increase the performance of interacting with the network devices in a faster pace. For instance, interacting with multiple devices in one go using something called concurrency. This would reduce the time it takes to get the data you need or to push config across multiple devices in one go. My current topology contains three main Cisco routers, as you can see on the screen. We have router A, B, and C, and those are the ones that I would be interacting with. Finally, we will go over how to utilize AEtest, which stands for Automated Easy Testing, and it is a module within pyATS that provides a framework of creating and executing automated tests. Okay, we will now show you how to set up the inventory file. But before we do this, let's talk about what is in that file. The inventory file in general is a YAML-formatted file that describes the devices in your network that you want to include in your automation activities. So what I would do, I will open up a web browser and then search pyATS create testbed. And then the link that we after is the Geni documentation. So I'm going to click on that URL. And then what I'll do, I will scroll down until I hit the pyATS create testbed section. You will see that here we would be able to create a YAML file from a CSV file. If you already have it, great. You can just use this utility to be able to convert it from a CSV file into a YAML file, which it can be used by pyATS. If not, we will be able to then to create a CSV file, and we will also use that utility to convert it accordingly. So what you must include in the CSV file, as you can see here in this section, you can see that the host name is a must, as well as the IP address, and you also have the option to add the port number if you want. You must also include the username and the password, which is self-explanatory, as well as the protocol. So what port number are you using? Telnet 23 or 22 for SSH, or HTTP or HTTPS, etc., etc. You also need to include the operating system. So in my case, I'm using Cisco devices. So it's going to be either iOS or iOS XE or iOS XR, so on and so forth. And also, finally, the final option that you would need to use is the enable password, but this is an optional option. And that's, I believe, is predominantly used for Cisco devices. And if you keep scrolling down, you can see this is the example of a an Excel sheet that is formatted as CSV file, where you have the headers at the top and then you've got your attributes or the device attributes at the bottom. So what I will do now, I will go ahead and go back to my server. And the first thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to activate my Python virtual environment and I'm going to issue this command. And then what I'm going to do next, I'm going to go to my current project, which is in that directory. And in this directory at the moment, if I issue ls-l, you can see that I have no files whatsoever. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the utility called vim, and I'm going to create a file called inventory. Right, and I'm gonna press the I to start inserting some data. And what I'm gonna start typing is the header of the file, which is the host name, the IP address, the username, password, protocol, and OS, and there's a comma separating each word. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to start typing the my device's attributes. So the second line, you can see that my router name is router-a, has an IP address of 192.168.1.1, and the username is admin, the password is Cisco123. The protocol that I'm using is SSH, and the OS or the operating system is going to be iOS. And the same applies for router B and router C. So now that I'm happy with this, I'm going to escape and then I'm going to colon and I'm going to say right quit. Now, if I issue cat inventory, you can see that the data has been successfully saved. And what I can do next is I can then, using the pyATS create optional command, to be able to convert that file from CSV into an inventory YAML. So what I'll do, I will say pyATS space create space test head and then space file dash dash path, and then in here I'm going to include the inventory.csv file that I've just created, and then I'm going to use the output option to export the inventory.yaml file, and then I'm going to say inventory.yaml, and then I'm going to hit enter. And as you can see that the pyATS have converted this file into YAML file. So if I say ls-l, you can see that there is another file that has been created. And if I cat that file, you can see all the device's attributes. You've got the name of the device, you've got the connections attributes, the credentials attribute, the OS attributes, and the type attributes, so on and so forth for router B and router C. So now at this stage, we are ready to go ahead and explore some of the pyATS CLI features. So what I'll do, I'll clear the screen and I will initially begin by issuing the pyATS space dash dash help. And as you can see here, there is a list of commands that we could use to utilize pyATS. So we already used the create command where we have converted the CSV file into an inventory.yaml file. And what other commands that we can use is the learn command, for instance, where we can create a snapshot of our config. For example, if I'm going to make a change to my network devices and I would need to perform some sort of pre-checks, and as part of this process I would need to take a snapshot of my current config just in case if something goes wrong, I would then have the ability to go back and redo the changes. This is exactly what learn command can do for us. I will cover this shortly. And one of the other command options that I really like is the parse command. And what I will do, I will open up the web browser again. And on the left hand side here, you can see that on the library section, there is an option called available parsers. And if you open that up, you can see all the commands that you could execute for the parsers command option for different vendors. So at the moment, you can see iOS, iOS XE, iOS XR, so on and so forth. And what I'll do, I will click on the iOS option to filter down all the options that are available. And what I can do, I can go through some of these options or some of these commands and show you how you can utilize these commands to be able to get the data you want from a Cisco device. So what I would do, I'll go back to my server and then go ahead and issue the following command. I'm going to say pyATS space parse, and then I'm going to pass the command show IP interface brief, and then I'm going to say dash dash test ed space, and then I'm going to set the inventory YAML file that I have just created, and then I'm going to hit enter. And then if I scroll all the way up, you can see that all the interfaces um, have been retrieved by pyATS and using the parse show command. And you can see that the outer key is interface and the inner key is the interface ID. And inside that is another dictionary where we can specify the some of the interface ID attributes. You can see that the IP address is unassigned. If I were to go to gig Ethernet 01, you can see that interface is okay, which means it's healthy. The IP address that is assigned to is 192.168.1.1. The method where the IP address is stored is in the NVRAM. The protocol is up and the status is up. And you can see that is being applied across the rest of the interfaces. So if I scroll all the way down, you can see that this is the second device, and the second device in gig Ethernet 02 has an IP address of 192.168.1.2. And then if I scroll down, you can see that the third device for interface gig Ethernet 03 has an IP address of 192.168.1.3. You can see it took literally a few seconds to get the information that I need by issuing the show IP interface parser command. Now let's go over another command option that is learn command. So what I will do, I will go ahead and execute the following command. I'm going to say pyATS learn, and then I'm going to say config, and then I'm going to specify the test bed dash file, and I'm going to say I need you to look at the inventory.yaml, and I want you to put the output or dash dash output, and then I'm going to specify the name of the folder that I want the output to be stored into. And I'm going to say to underscore December or DEC underscore 2023 underscore config underscore 01. So while I'll go ahead and hit enter. You can see that it prompted with learning the config for device A, router B, and router C. And this is the summary of the output. As you can see on the screen, you will be able to learn the config features on router A, for instance. If you follow that path, it tells you where the file is stored. So if I go ahead and less space and then put the path that I've just copied from there, and then I can hit enter, you can see that this file is related to the operation aspect of the device. So if I keep going down, and that this is where the file ends. However, if I then go scroll all the way up and then select the actual config file or the device console option and say less and paste that, you can see that the running config has been displayed or has been stored into a file. So if I scroll all the way down, you can see all the config that is part of my device, so on and so forth. So what I would do is, what happens if I then go back to my router? So let's say I'm going to go back to my router, and what I'll do some changes, network changes. So I'm gonna go and say terminal, the config terminal, and then in here I'm going to add interface loopback 1. So at the moment, if I say do show IP interface brief, you can see at the moment we have already an interface called loopback 1. And what I will do, I'm going to set the description asterisk multiplied by 3, and I'm going to say this is a test. And then what I'll do, I will hit end, and then I will save the configuration. So this is just obviously an example of some sort of config change to my network. I will then go back and then reissue that command, but this time I'm going to call it, or I'm going to store it in another folder, and I'm going to call it 2nd of December 2023 config underscore 02. And then I'm going to hit enter. Now that this has been completed, what I could do next is I could use the diff command option as part of the pyATS commands options that we can use. And what I will do, I will say pyATS space, use the diff option command, and then what I'm going to do, I'm going to specify the folder that I wanted to compare it with. So I'm going to specify the first, and then I'm going to go ahead and specify the second. And then I want pyATS to output the difference into another folder, and which I'm going to call it the 2nd of December 2023 underscore diff underscore 01. And then I'm going to hit enter. You can see on the screen that Geni summarized this for us. From there, we can read that it found some differences in router A, but router B and router C are identical. So what we can do, I can go ahead and copy this file, and I can say them, and then put the name of the file in there. And here you can read that the difference that it found between the previous snapshot or snapshot 1 versus snapshot 2 is that snapshot 2 has got an additional config, and this additional config is related to description of the interface loopback 1, much like what we did and what I showed you guys. And if you want to know the difference between minus and pluses, pluses indicates that there is a config that has been added, and minus means config has been removed. Next, what we'll be doing here is to show you how you can interact with network devices using pyATS library in an IDE environment. So I've created a new project in PyCharm, and I created a new file called main.py. And what I'm going to do next, I'm going to say from pyats.topology, and I'm going to say import loader, and also I'm going to say from rich import print as r underscore print. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to specify the location of the inventory file. So I will say test bed equal to loader object.load, and in here we would need to specify the path for the inventory file. I haven't created that yet, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to my diff server and I'm going to say cat inventory.yaml, and I will grab all these configurations and I will copy them, go back to my terminal, create a new file called inventory.yaml, and then I'm going to paste all the config in here. I'll then exit and save the file. And then what I'm going to do next, I'm going to retrieve the path for the file in question. And then I'm going to paste it here. And then finally, I'm going to set the name of the file that I've just created. Now what we can do is we can print that object. So what I'll do, I will say r underscore print, and I'm going to specify the test bed. And then I'm going to execute the script. And you can see here that we get the test object inventory. So what I'll do next, I'm going to specify something called dir to list all the directory of this object and all the attributes that are associated with that object. And then I have set the dir, and then what I'm going to do, I'm going to execute that script again. And in here, we would be able to pass all these attributes accordingly. So if I want to see how many devices do I have in the inventory file, I can set the devices and I can print the devices in question. So what I can do, I can say, for instance, I can say r underscore print testbed.devices and then execute that again. And you can see here on the list that topology devices contain router A and router B as well as router C. So what I can do next, I could ultimately say I can create a new object which is router underscore A, for instance. So I'm going to say router underscore A equal to testbed dot devices, and I'm going to specify the name of the device that I want. And in here, what I'm going to do, I'm going to say r underscore print, and I'm going to say dir open brackets, and I'm going to specify the router underscore A object. And then I'm going to comment line number 6. And in here, we can get all these different attributes that we could use. So for instance, if we wanted to connect to that device, we can use this one. If we want to disconnect, we can use that function, and so on and so forth. So what I could do next is I could go back to my editor and I can say something like router underscore A dot connect, and then what I will do, I will be able to use one of the options that we saw earlier, which is the parse. So let me show you what I mean. So you can see here that we can use the parse option. But before we do that, we would need obviously to connect to the router first. So that's why line number 10 is very important. And what I'm going to do next, I'm going to create a variable, and I'm going to call that variable l underscore var underscore show underscore version. And then here I'm going to say router underscore A, and I want to use the parse option. And inside here, I'm going to say show version. Then what I'm going to do, I'm going to print the output of l underscore var underscore show underscore version. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to comment line number 8, and then I'm going to execute the script again. And as you can see here from the output, if I scroll all the way up, you can see what is going on in the background. I can understand that the output can be noisy, but we can suppress this if we wanted to. And then if I scroll all the way down, you can see that the output for router A is up here. So we have the outer key, which is version, and then the inner key, which is version short, platform, version, image, ID, the OS, etc., etc. And what we can do is we can work through our data programmatically. But if you want to suppress this output, what we can do, we can go back to our script, and then under connect here, we can say something like log underscore std out equal to false. And then I'm going to execute the script again. And this time we should be able to only see the show version output in a JSON format. Now, if you want to go through all of your devices in one go, we could do that using a for loop. So I'm going to show you how you can do that, but also I'm going to show you how you can use a different attribute, such as learn, for instance. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and say for each device or each underscore device in test bed dot devices dot keys. And then in here, I'm going to say device equal to test bed dot devices. And then we're going to specify this time each device. And in here, we would need to connect to that device. So we're going to say device dot connect. And also we are going to suppress the verbose output. So I'm going to say log underscore std out equal to false. And what I will do, I want to learn about arb. So I'm going to say l underscore var underscore arb equal to device dot learn. And then what I'm going to learn is something called arb. And then what I want to do, I'm going to say r underscore print. And then here I want to print the l underscore var underscore arb. And I'm going to convert it into dictionary. And that's it. So what I'll do, I am going to comment all of that. So I'm going to go ahead and execute this. And there is a problem. Okay, yeah, so sorry, I missed the T. So let me rectify that quickly. And here we go, guys. So we get the output. So if I scroll all the way up, so I can see that the ARP output, as you can see on the screen, you've got the outer key, and then you've got the inner key, and then the inner key, and so on and so forth. Got the neighbors 192.168.1.254, which is the default gateway, and it has the MAC address of this, so on and so forth. That's the second device here, and that would be for the third device. So what I want to be able to cover next is the concurrency utility that we could use in order for us to examine multiple devices in one go rather than happen to execute certain commands in a linear method. So what I want to show you is how long will it take for this script to be executed, having to go through one device at a time. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the terminal and I'm going to say time But before I do that, let me just like reveal the files that I have in my project. And what I can do, I can say time Python, and I'm going to say main.py. So you can see at the bottom here, it did take 11 seconds to complete the task, and that is only for 3 devices. So imagine the more devices you have, the longer it will take. Hence why we would need to use something called concurrency, and I'm going to show you that next. Okay, guys, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to comment that block of code, and then I'm going to say from pyats.async, I want to import something called pcall. And then what I'll do, I'm going to create a function, and I'm going to call it fun underscore get underscore arp. And in here, I'm going to pass device. And inside the function, I'm going to create a local variable, and I'm going to call it l underscore var underscore arp equal to device dot learn, and I'm going to set the arp option. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to say r underscore print l underscore var dot to underscore dict. And then I'm going to go down to line number 11, and I'm going to say testbed dot connect. And I'm going to set the log std out to false to suppress the noisy output. And then I'm going to say pcall, and inside the brackets, I'm going to reference the function that I've just created as the first parameter. And then the second parameter, I'm going to say device equal to testbed dot devices dot values. So at this point, we should be able to print what we learned about the ARP from all of our 3 devices. So I'll go ahead and execute that. Right, okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to execute the same script, but I'm going to use the time function, and I'm going to say time python main.py. And you can see that this time it took us only 5 seconds to complete the job. So that is one of the reasons why concurrency can be quite beneficial if you have multiple devices, let's say hundreds of devices that you want to be able to retrieve or push config to all of them. Okay guys, so what I'm going to do next, I'm going to show you how you can then use the pyATS AEtest. So before we jump into coding, let's show you how you can find all the information that you need in case if you want to build a complex test environment. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to open up my web browser, and then I'm going to go to my search engine, and I'm going to start typing pyATS AEtest. And the URL that you're after is the AEtest documentation. So if you click on that one, and in here, you would be able to see how you can build easy to complex test environment. So what I will do, I will show you a simple use case where you can use AEtest in my IDE environment for a particular use case. So I'll go back to my IDE, and then I'm going to comment all of that. And from line number 4, I am going to say from pyATS, I want to import AEtest. And the first thing that I want to be able to do is to get some inner key and outer keys so that I can drill into a specific use case test. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this piece of config here. And I'm going to say router underscore A equal to testbed.devices. And I'm going to specify the name of the device, which is router A or router-A. And then I'm going to connect it to that device by using the router underscore A object. And I'm going to say connect. And again, I'm going to suppress the noisy output. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to paste it in here. And then I'm going to say result equal to router underscore A dot parse. And I'm going to say show version. And I'm going to print that result. So r underscore print, I want to print that result. And then let's see the output. So if I execute this, right, so that's the outer key that we will need. So if I put that in here, for instance, oops, sorry, that's not what I meant. So if I copy that, and then the inner key that I'm after is the version. So I'm going to say another, the inner key equal to version as well. And then I'm going to execute that script again. And here we should be able to just get the ICE version, which you can see on the screen. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to comment it out here. And then what I'll do, I'll comment all of that code. And then the first thing that we need to do is we need to create a class. You can call that class whatever you want, but I'm going to go ahead and call it Cisco. And inside those brackets, I'm going to say AEtest dot test case. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to set a decorator. So I'm going to say AEtest dot setup, and I'm going to call that method is meth underscore setup, and I will set the parameters self dot parameters. I'm going to refer to the test bed, and then I'm going to say dot connect, and I'm going to suppress the output as well here. So I'm going to copy that and I'm going to paste it in here. So that's my first method where I'm only initiating the connectivity to the end device. The next method that I'm going to do, I'm going to create the decorator first, which is AEtest. And here I'm going to say the actual test. And then I'm going to say diff underscore meth, or sorry, diff space meth underscore get underscore version. And then I am going to say for each underscore device n self dot parameters, and I'm going to specify the test bed option dot devices dot values. So we want to go through all of the devices in the inventory file, and I'm going to say result equal to each device dot parse. We want to pass this command, which is show version. And then we are going to use the assert function. And we're going to say result. And this is where we need to copy this outer key and the inner key. And what we will be able to do, we can then test if all my devices do have this particular iOS version. So I can then copy the iOS version and I can paste it in here. And then now I can get out of my class, and in here I can start instantiate my test bed. So I'm going to say test bed equal to loader dot load, and I'm going to specify the location of my inventory file, and then I'm going to say AEtest dot main, and I'm going to say test bed equal to test bed. So if I put everything in place and if I configured everything correctly, we should be able to get a summary of the test that we are about to perform. So I'm going to go ahead and execute the script. And you can see that the overall result is a success. You can see that this has been passed, this has been passed, and this has been passed. All methods and all functions have been passed within my class. And I can see from the report there are no issues whatsoever. So what I can do next, if I then remove that T, for instance, and execute that again, you can see that the method get version have failed. So, and subsequently, the test result have failed. That's it, folks. If you found this video helpful, please kindly don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification so that you never miss our future tutorials and tech insights. If you have any questions, comments, feel free to drop a comment below and I will do my best to get back to you as soon as I can. Remember, guys, to keep learning and stay curious and inspired. And until next time, peace.